Now, ever since I got the brand new 2020 TCL 6 series in, a lot of comments have asked me to compare it to other QLEDs out there. And since I have the Samsung Q90T QLED also, I figured it would be a great chance to do just that. So in this video, we're going to see if the budget TCL performs as well as its more expensive Samsung counterpart, or if the more expensive Samsung really is that much better than the TCL. So stick around. Hey guys, it's the Villaman here, home theater enthusiast and lover of all things tech. And if you're new here, then on this channel we review, demo and compare the tech that entertains you, which include TVs like these. So if you're into that, then make sure to hit that subscribe button and come along for the ride. Now, if you're interested in buying any of these TVs or learning more about them, I've left links in the description that you can check out. So both TVs will be in their most accurate picture modes, and first we'll run some tests and then we'll get directly into the picture comparison. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's start the test off using my custom HDR full array local dimming test zone counter, and we're not using it to count the zones because we know how many zones each TV has. What we're doing is to see how the TVs perform using an especially bright point moving across the screen. Now the camera will have a high exposure just so we can see exactly how much light is being produced by the point on each respective TV. Ideally, each TV should have as little blooming around the square as possible, as since these are full array local dimming TVs, the amount of blooming is a direct result of the full array local dimming algorithm and the amount of full array local dimming zones. And as we see here, the 6 series handles the test better than the Q90T. Next up is another very difficult test for an LCD TV, the star field test. This will have many point brightness elements moving across the screen on a dark background. And the first differentiator we see is the time it takes for the TCL to actually begin the test. The stars are also not as bright on the TCL, which indicates some black crush happening. Both TVs though suffer from a lot of blooming during this test. Now let's move into the actual picture comparison. During this test, you'll see areas which appear to be clipping, and this is not caused by the TV directly. In fact, the TVs get so bright that the camera had trouble capturing all the details, so the details in the highest brightest areas sometimes were clipped. The first observation you should make is how much brighter the Q90T is than the 6 series. Both TVs have similar contrast performance, but the bright areas on the Samsung are just brighter overall. The colors on both TVs, however, are quite vivid thanks to their quantum dot technology. But again, although the TCL gets really bright, it just doesn't get as bright as the Samsung. Both TVs also handle motion very well, so motion handling or motion interpolation isn't an issue on either set. A scene like this really highlights just how vivid the colors on a QLED TV can be. They look really good. In this scene, I increased the exposure of the camera so we can better see how blooming affects the picture of both TVs. And as you see, they both have a lot of blooming in this challenging scene. Now let's put them both together so we can compare the picture even closer. Having them so closely compared amplifies the difference in brightness even more. And again, although the Samsung may seem like it lacks detail in some of the highlights, it's actually because the TV gets so bright in some scenes that it clips the detail in the camera. Both TVs have great dynamic range, but the Samsung overall maintains a higher average scene brightness. I also got a suggestion in the comments to compare the picture quality of game mode to the movie mode, which I think was a great idea. The objective is to see how much of the picture quality you lose in game mode on both TVs. And while both TVs are in their respective game mode, the Samsung is the one with the bigger picture difference between the two. Now the Samsung tends to boost the brightness of the mid-tones in order to help shadow detail, I presume, but the TCL maintains a very similar picture to the movie mode. You can hardly tell the difference actually. However, since both TVs are connected to the same source and the Samsung transitions from scene to scene just slightly faster than the TCL, we can then conclude that the Samsung has a lower input lag. That said, I did compare the actual game mode performance on both TVs, so come back for that one. Although when viewed straight on, both TVs have very similar picture characteristics, that begins to change when we view them off-axis. Samsung has their ultra viewing angle technology, which enhances their off-axis viewing, and TCL does not, and that's really evident when you view the TV from the sides. Although both TVs have some color shifting and contrast loss when viewed off-axis, on the Samsung it's not as bad as it is on the TCL. On the TCL, off-axis viewing also amplifies the amount of blooming that's visible, especially on darker scenes. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments. But at least one takeaway is we can see just how well the TCL performs compared to its more expensive Samsung counterpart. The TCL maintained a consistently great picture, and although it wasn't as bright as the Q90T, it still had just as much of a punchy picture as the Samsung did, with colors that were just as vibrant because of course they both support 100% coverage of the DCI-P3 color space thanks to their QLED technology. That said, the Samsung has a few features that the TCL doesn't have. So in off-axis viewing, for example, there is a much better picture on the Samsung, and even though the camera wasn't able to capture it completely, whenever you would view off-axis on the TCL, you would see a lot of blooming in certain scenes, and it was a surprising amount. Now this was true for both horizontal and vertical off-axis viewing, and the picture processors on both TVs were really good with minimal minimal artifacting, as you'll see in the screen test videos for both of these TVs. That said, I couldn't directly compare upscaling performance because one TV was 55 inches while the other is 65 inches. Also, panel uniformity was better on the TCL, but that's directly influenced by the size of the panel. So the larger the panel is, the more likely that you'll have panel uniformity issues. So since one TV was 55 inches and the other was 65 inches, then that's not really a fair comparison. That said, there wasn't any deal-breaking panel uniformity issues on the Samsung. It just wasn't as clean as the TCL. The Q90T definitely has better sound owing to their adaptive sound technology, which actually tracks objects across the screen as they move. So that's definitely a better sound implementation, and it actually sounds better. Also, although there was some color shifting on both TVs with off-axis viewing, the Samsung maintained a more natural looking picture when viewed off-axis. And speaking of things like next-gen connectivity ports, the TCL only has HDMI 2.0 ports, while the Samsung has one HDMI 2.1 port. Now, both TVs support HDMI 2.1 features, but the Samsung also supports FreeSync. You can game at up to 120 Hz at 1440p on both TVs, but only the Samsung with its HDMI 2.1 port allows you to game at 4K at 120 Hz. 120 Hz gaming on HDMI 2.0 ports is limited to 1440p, so all the ports on the TCL can only go up to 1440p if gaming at 120 Hz, and the three HDMI 2.0 ports on the Samsung can only do the same. Now, if you're gaming at 60 Hz, you can game at 4K on both TVs. Now, I'll have a gaming comparison of both TVs using both my PC and my Xbox One X, so make sure to come back for that. Make sure you subscribe for that. But this comparison just proves that when talking strictly picture quality, the TCL 6 series most definitely punches above its weight. Although it may not get as bright as the Q90T, it most certainly maintains a very good picture. And even considering that, the specular highlights that it creates in some scenes in the comparison were brighter on the TCL than they were on the Samsung. So that's interesting, right? I was actually also surprised at how little the color and contrast profiles changed on the TCL when switching from movie mode to game mode. We could see a definite change on the Q90T, but the 6 series maintained a very similar picture, and I guess that's thanks to the THX game mode. But yeah, let me know in the comments about what you think about the comparison and what I can do better for the next one. Don't forget to like the video if you liked it, and thanks for watching. Until next time, this has been your friendly neighborhood Villaman saying be safe and peace.